Hi there. Well. Um, I haven't uploaded to this channel in a while. The last video I posted was in October 2019 when I uploaded a 10-minute video of me talking about suicide and my experience until that point of it. Now, there's a couple of problems I have with that older video that I don't think I've aged well, and I might talk about that later in this video. But another video that I uploaded before that was me talking about my 5-year experience at Laura Music Camp, a camp that I went to as a camper for 5 years. And that video I do still like and appreciate. And I do stand by with a lot of what I talked about. And I think it's good um, a good summary of basically not just my experience at Learn Music Camp, but also my journey through my high school years, basically, and how I went from a little shy boy with shaved hair to a more outgoing and vibrant person with colored hair. And now, and I do still like a lot what I said in that video, but now, as I'm sure you can probably tell, a lot has happened since 2019, not just for me, but also for many other people. And if there's one word that I'm sure we can all agree with to describe what has happened since then, these past few years have certainly been life altering. I'm sure that's a sentiment we can all agree with to some degree. But I wanted to make this video, you know, not just to talk about the obvious things like the pandemic and everything, but also this is a video that I wanted to make for a really long time now. And I knew this is something I wanted to talk about, and I think my first attempt to talk about it was that video that I posted on Suicide Awareness Day in October of 2019. But that was, and that little guy was he didn't really know yet, but that was still in the very beginning of his battle with suicidal depression. Of course, he didn't really know yet, so that's not really his fault. But I knew this is something I wanted to talk about for quite a few years, but I just didn't know when I wanted to talk about it, because during this battle that I've had, I knew it was raw, but arguably too raw to talk about it, and I didn't know how I really wanted to present it, and I felt it wasn't necessary. And even after this battle ended, I felt like making a video about it was going to be, it felt like a premature victory lap in a way. But now that it's been some time since this battle has ended, and it's seemed like my life has been steadily positive since then, and I'm turning 23 years old on the day that I'm probably going to upload this. I think today might be the best day to talk about this, to finally talk about this. And there's many things that I want to accomplish making this video, not just talking about it, but also to just shine a light on some parts that might help some people for just kind of clarification, to hopefully make amends with some people who have wronged during this time, and to just kind of give the full story in the most entirety that I can, to hopefully finally make peace, not just with everybody, but also to myself, and to finally put this era of my life to rest once and for all. So that's what I'm trying to do. And I also hope me sharing this story can, and I think this is most important, help other people who might be going through something similar that I did, because I know there are people who have gone through stuff like this before. So yeah, and I'm gonna try to do the best I can to try to get the full story, because if there's one thing that I know through my time on social media, especially through Instagram, it's that those pictures you see on Instagram, they're only small, tiny little snippets of people's lives and what they're feeling. And it took me much longer than I'd like to admit to realize that. But those little pictures and those couple lines of text don't reflect at all on what people are actually going through and what they're feeling. And while in recent years I've tried to be as transparent and authentic as possible in my social media presence, I do think that it took me a long time to get to the point where I'm now, where I'm really happy with how my online presence is. And those pictures that I would give out at that time, that those were kind of like the only window into this very long and complicated story or journey, if you will. And I hope this, me sharing it in its entirety as best I can help put all the pieces together and connect all the dots together to just give the full story and everything. But anyway, I've rambled with this intro enough. I guess to start, I think it's worth recapping everything that led up to 2019. And that is, I'm sure most of the people who are watching this video can at least recognize me as someone who used to play the oboe. I'm sure you probably recognize me as that person. And I think I was good at it. And I did enjoy many aspects of it for a long time. I played it for many years. I started in elementary school, and I kept playing it into high school. And I was doing ensembles in school. I had good teachers who taught me a lot, and I was even doing extra ensembles at a nearby university. And I was very quickly rising through the ranks of those ensembles, and I think I got the idea, and I quickly realized that I could make a career out of this. And also led me to going to Lower Music Camp that I mentioned earlier, and meeting so many amazing people through that. Many of who I still talk to this day, and it's awesome. But about halfway through high school, at the time I knew that I wanted to go to college to major in music, and one of the options was music education, and that one I just kind of went with because I did enjoy teaching, and I thought that was my best option. But for some reason, I didn't think that I was capable of getting into a good university for some reason. And I think it was just because of how I was doing in school. I was never an A's guy. I was kind of a B's and C's that would barely make the honor roll kind of student. I wasn't great by any means. And there's not really too much, wrong with those kinds of grades, but for some reason, I just thought it was not going to be enough. And so I felt like I needed some kind of edge to help me get into college. And part of this urge came from the fact that I also felt like I had to go to a four-year university immediately after graduating from high school. And it felt like that was my only option, even though I now know it completely wasn't. You don't have to go to a 4-year university right after you graduate high school. You can just start working somewhere, get a job, learn more about the real world outside of high school. You can go to community college for a couple of years, get your general studies out of the way. And while I do believe these options were presented to me, from what I remember, they were presented to me in a bit of a condescending way. And it was a way that made me feel like those were doing those were a losing proposition. Anything other than going to a 4-year university was a losing proposition. But I now know that's absolutely not true at all. Hell, I didn't even know what a gap year was until I graduated high school. And by that point, I had already made my decision on where I was going to go to university. And so I really wish I knew that was an option for me. Because for some reason, I felt like going to community college was like where the bad kids go or something. But that's not true at all. Community college is great. I'm going to community college right now. And it's awesome. And I enjoy it a lot. But for some reason, I didn't think that was an option for me. And I had to go to a 4-year university, and I had to major in music education because it seemed to be the only thing that I was good at to make a career out of. And so I went with it. But I felt like I wasn't going to get into a good school because I didn't like how my grades were, and I felt like I needed some sort of edge. But then, about halfway through high school, I came across a preparatory program for the university that I was going to on weekends for extra ensembles. And it was a program where you can basically take college level classes and even earn credits. And I just looked at that and said, this is perfect. This is exactly what I need. And this is my ticket to college, basically. And so I did it. Now, of course, not only would it cost a lot, it would also basically mean I would have to go to a second school. At least 3 times a week. I would have to drive all the way. I would have to make the 45-minute drive to go all the way to that university and basically do college level classes until about 10 o'clock in the evening. So I would go to regular school about 6 in the morning. As soon as that was over, do all my homework as quickly as I can, drive 45 minutes to that university, and then I would be there until 9 o'clock, and I wouldn't get home until 10 o'clock. I had to make that drive at least 3 times a week. And that was during my junior and senior year of high school. During my junior year, I tried to do tennis. I tried to be on the tennis team. I tried to balance that out. Then during my senior year, I was auditioning and submitting applications for colleges, and also was trying to balance a part-time job, as well as all of my music ensembles, both at regular school and at the university, lessons, auditions, so much. It was, to say the very least, a lot. To this day, I still don't know how I made it through those 2 years. They were undoubtedly the busiest and most difficult 2 years of my life. And so hard, in fact, that it really came at a cost. And I, put it simply, almost didn't make it through at the very end. Because people ask me, how did you make it through that? And I was like, I don't know. I almost didn't. I did, but I almost didn't. And it was definitely through my senior year that the pressure was really starting to get to me. And again, this is a very, very short summary. This is very brief of going through everything. There's a lot of other factors that came to this. Just a lot of stress was getting to me, and I was turning to other things to try to escape that stress, and it wasn't working out well. And I was the kind of student who would do very well at first and then start to fall behind. And then towards the very end, I would get a wake-up call that if I don't turn this around, I was going to fail. And then I'd put in the effort, come back up, and make it at the last minute. And while it did technically work, it was still completely stressful, out of my mind, and it wasn't ideal. It really was not the ideal situation for getting through school. Lots of procrastination, lots of work getting done last minute. I would make a comeback at the very end, and I would just barely pass. Again, technically it worked, so that's kind of why I kept doing it. But again, it was not ideal, and it was very, very, very tough to live through and very demoralizing. And I end up finding myself in that situation again during my last semester of my senior year of high school. And it kept getting worse and worse. And it got to the point where I was on the verge of failing. For a brief time, I thought I wasn't going to pass the program, and I wasn't going to pass high school, and I wasn't going to graduate. And I knew if that happened, I would be devastated. And that was the first time that the words, "I should kill myself," came into my head. And that was the first time I ever had the feelings of suicidal depression. Now, thankfully, I did make a comeback like I have done, and I was able to barely pass. I was able to pass the program and graduate high school. And once I did, I was relieved. It was certainly a very close call, to say the least, but I had made it. So that was finally over now. And then I went to Lower Music Camp very after that, and I had an amazing time with so many amazing people. And I was able to hang out with a lot of people over the summer, which was super fun. And at that time, I felt like things were looking up. I felt like that was the end of my struggles after that. And I was about to go to college. I'd already been accepted and agreed to go to university, a different one in another state. And I thought, okay, this is going to be new school, new life, start fresh. And I don't have to make a 45-minute drive 3 times a week. Everything will be in one concentrated campus. I have less classes. Some of these classes I've basically already taken at this point, so should be a piece of cake, right? But for some reason, it wasn't. And I think that's when I should have realized many things. First, that's when I should have realized that music education probably was not the right major for me, was not the right path. Because when you're majoring in music, it's something that you really have to be fully committed to for it to fully work. And I just wasn't. I really wasn't even fully into it during the preparatory program, during my junior and senior year of high school. And I really should have realized that at that time. But for some reason, I kept going just because I felt like this was my only option. I felt like I had no other choice. I feel like everything I've been leading into, or everything that I've been doing, has led up to this point, and I can't turn back. There's no going back. There's no changing pathways. But I should have realized sooner that this probably wasn't for me, and I needed to find something else. And then the second thing is, when I started going to this new university, I really wanted to try to rebuild my social life because it was okay in high school. It wasn't horrible. I had friends, but I really wanted to, I just had this desire to make everybody like me because I had a lot of success at LMC, at Lower Music Camp, making a bunch of new friends, having like a great, I guess, ego and social status, lots of clout, I guess, if you will. Um, and it worked great then. So I thought, okay, well, if I apply like kind of the same, you know, techniques or social patterns to this new university, then my social life can be great. And it would all work out. And I certainly tried. I definitely do. I did try to really socialize with people, to put myself out there, and to create a good social circle. And I think it partially worked out, but I think my big problem is I tried too hard. Because I think the maintaining a good social life lies right between focus, commitment, and serenity. You can't do nothing because then nothing's going to happen and you run the risk of basically letting your social life go. But you also can't try too hard as well because then you risk doing damage that could make things worse. And I think I put a lot more energy into socialization than my academics, which hurt that. And then when my academics would fail, then it would also hurt my social life. And then this vicious cycle started happening. And it just had this snowball effect where it kept getting worse and worse. All the friendships that I had either made or strengthened during that summer of 2019 started fading, and I started to act in a condescending way towards some people, even lashing out at some, and because I had this, for some reason, need to be liked by everyone. Because like now I know obviously you're not going to please everyone. It's impossible. You can't do it no matter how hard you try. But for some reason I had this need to be liked by everyone, and I wanted to have many friends. And I want them all, and I wanted to have a good connection with all of them, and I wanted them all to like me. But you can't do all that and also do well in your academics. And because of the fact that I found myself also struggling on my academics in the same way that I had previously struggled on them in the past, I did not fix my nasty patterns of procrastination and waiting until last minute to do things. I kept falling into that same cycle, and many of my social connections with people were starting to diminish, and it just started to destroy me mentally. And it got so bad where I was no longer myself. I started lashing out at people, and I started just being a very toxic human being. And I started to pretend that I had some crazy mental illness and would just like go into group chats on social media and just say a bunch of like profanity. And I pretended that I had like dissociative identity disorder, and would just like say and I would just use it as an excuse to like say crazy things at people. And I would do it just because I wanted attention. I think it was just for me to get attention and to like score sympathy points with people. Just because I felt, for some reason, I felt like it was my last like ditch effort to get attention from people. It was an act of desperation, really. Um, but of course, like, and while people did show plenty of sympathy towards me, and I'm very thankful that many people did reach out to me in a very caring way. Um, it still, you know, it definitely showed how mentally deteriorated I was. And obviously, people's messages and reaching out are not going to fix that wasn't going to fix what was wrong with me. And then it just turned into this overwhelming, dominant idea of just not wanting to be around anymore. I felt like everything that I had built and everything that had leaned up to my life was crumbling right before my eyes. My social life that I tried so hard to build was just vanishing in front of my eyes. I was falling into the same vicious cycle of my academics. I was not on track to pass. And I felt like that this is it. I failed. So I have to kill myself. And it led to me a friend of mine basically calling the campus police. And then they took me to a local hospital, and I was admitted into their mental health program for about a week. And then that was when finally everything just came tumbling down. And I had to call my mom, tell her what happened. She came up to see me, and eventually I was discharged from the hospital. And after that, I pretty much stopped going to class. I mean, I already missed a full week, and I was already failing. So we came to the decision that I was going to take a medical leave of absence and drop out of college. And while now I do think that was absolutely the right decision, I do not regret that at all. I think that was absolutely what I needed. At the time, I still felt like I had failed. I still felt like that I had failed, and it was going to be very hard to come back from this. And it hurt. It broke my heart to basically walk away from everything that I'd been building towards for so many years. And things didn't really improve for me mentally immediately after that. While I was now thankfully home and not really doing much, I was still very overcome with horrible thoughts and really nasty, intrusive feelings. And it was still pretty bad that I had to go to a hospital a second time in January of 2020, where once again, someone saw something that I'd post that was very concerning, which they just certainly had the right to feel that way, and called the police, and then I was taken to the hospital again for another week. Now, thankfully, after that, my behavior started to change, because up until then I had still been pretending I had some sort of crazy illness, and then I was even going to a point where I would post things on social media and pretend to like be someone else, or I would even like make text messages from my dad that displayed him as an abusive father and post that. And which was like an extremely insane thing to do and a very wrong thing to do, because my dad is not abusive. He is a fantastic person, and a very loving father, and I love him to death. So it was, not only, an extremely mischaracterization of him, but also like, it was throwing him under the bus too for stuff that I was going through. It was not fair to him, and it wasn't fair to people who saw those posts and basically messaged me, say, with very loving things too. I was like, hey, if you need to come over, and live at our place, you can. And I'm very thankful to all those people who did reach out, like, for, your very kind words and, and kind hearts too. I'm never going to be able to fully repay you and thank you enough for all the things you gave me. But, at the same time, I'm also very sorry, because it wasn't fair to you to see those things that were not happening. Those were fabricated by me. I was making those things up to try to get sympathy points and to get attention from you. And I'm sorry that you had to witness that from me. You had to witness such a nasty and mischaracterization of not only me, but also my family. It was extremely messed up. It was fucked up. That's what it was. And I'm endlessly ashamed of it. But yeah, that's what was happening. And I don't know if anybody remembers those at this point. It was a long time ago, 4 years ago, as a matter of fact. But I hope, this kind of basically sets the record straight. A lot of the things that I said online were very fabricated, and it was solely meant to get attention and sympathy from people who saw it. And it got to the point where I had to go to a mental hospital again, and I think I deserved it, even though it was very hard to live through. I do think I did. That was very much that I had it coming. I really did. And after that, my parents, very rightfully so, said, okay, we gotta fix this. So they gave me very limited access to social media, my phone and stuff. And I think they were very right to do that. And yeah, so they started to really limit me, and because of that, I was like, okay, I've now been in a mental hospital twice now. This really does need to stop. I need to stop doing this. And then COVID happened. And even though I was thinking about going back to school and trying to make another attempt to basically redeem myself or something, I probably would have gone back to music education and tried that again, and I probably would have failed again, because again, I would later realize it was not my passion, and I should have known that. And in a way, I'm actually kind of glad that COVID happened. I know that's a crazy thing to say, because so much pain and suffering came out of the pandemic, and I definitely don't forgive that at all. I don't envy that. But in a way, I am kind of glad that COVID happened, because even though it was very hard, because it wasn't easy for me to live through ever. Like many people, I was completely terrified of what was going on. for a while it seemed like that we were never going to socialize with each other again. We were just going to stay in lockdown forever, and this was just never going to improve, and we would never go back to a sense of normalcy again. And yeah, especially if, as someone who was already in a pretty bad place mentally, to be then locked in their house and not even having a chance to get out and socialize with anybody else. After I pretty much like blown up my social life, I had no chance to rebuild it in any sort of way. So that was definitely not easy at all to live through COVID lockdowns right after the events that took place prior. So that was very hard to live through, and I can't really say that mine was particularly awful because I didn't really lose anybody close to COVID, because that's something that most assuredly happened to so many people in the world. So I can't say that I that I had the worst case scenario or anything. I do not believe that at all, nor should I. I was pretty lucky. We were pretty lucky that not only we didn't lose anybody close to us, but it didn't really have much of an effect on us financially because my mom works from home and my dad runs a pretty essential business. So, yeah, so we did get pretty lucky. I won't lie about that. We were pretty fortunate that we were in the position that we were to make it through that. So during this time, so because of that, I did have a lot of time to think and to reflect upon myself. And there were still so many people that I really wanted to try to connect with, because I knew that because of how toxic I had been, it just severed so many friendships that I had, and I desperately wanted to try to repair that, but I just didn't know how, and I don't think I had a good way to do it because I still was struggling to fix what was to still fix and understand what was happening with myself. And it took me a long time to do that. But I did start taking therapy that year, which I do think was, in the long run, absolutely was a lifesaver. It really was. But even as things started opening back up, I just decided to start working. I decided not to go back to school. I realized that wasn't going to happen because I do not like online classes at all. I prefer in person. I just can't do online classes. It's just not for me. It's not the way I learn. I realized I probably wasn't going to go back to school anytime soon. So I was like, okay, so I need to do something then, because just staying at home all day it's not good for you. It certainly wasn't good for me, even though, because I was basically stuck at home with my thoughts, and that's just not a good mix. So I started working, and eventually started working full time in 2021, and it was basically, just to kind of sum things up, a long road of reflecting, just trying to understand myself and trying to find myself, because I feel like I've kind of like I had lost my way. And also I think those years of between when you turn 18 and like 21 and 22, it's always such a weird era in your life, because I think, it's the time you're turning into adult. Because when you turn 18, even though you're now legally an adult, you don't just mature into adult overnight. it's you're still growing, and you're transitioning. You're very slowly transitioning into learning the responsibilities of what it is to be an adult. Because even though I did turn 18 in 2019, I really don't feel like I truly felt like an adult until I was at least 21. Or like at the earliest, I mean. And during that time, not only are you transitioning from a person with not as many responsibilities to someone with so many responsibilities, but also many of the things that you used to enjoy as a kid, you no longer really find enjoyment in. You no longer find enjoyment or pleasure in things that used to give you that joy during your kid. You have to kind of find new hobbies. You lose a lot of your old hobbies, and you really have to find new ones. And that's something that I didn't really understand because, especially during my time of mental crisis, I tried to retreat into things that did bring me joy as a kid, but I didn't enjoy them anymore. And that made things worse because then I feel like I had no hobbies or I had no hobbies anymore, and I felt like I couldn't really find joy in anything, and I felt like I would never truly experience happiness ever again. There was really a time when even though I didn't want to kill myself anymore, I just didn't think I was going to be truly happy again because everything that I had previously loved and enjoyed in life was now gone. And it was hard. It's hard to live through that. And I wish I knew that that's something that you can go through when you're going from being a kid to being an adult. And I think that's something that a lot of people experience, but they don't understand it just because they don't realize that it takes a long time for you to make that transition, right? And there was really for a long time, people, would usually tell me, oh, there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel. You're going to see it. And I was just like, I don't know. It's been years and I just haven't seen it. And like I said, it's you even as much as you want to one day just a light to go off in your head or a switch to turn overnight and then all of a sudden you feel happy again, it's not a quick process. It's a very long process, and for some people it can be longer than others. For some it can be a year or two, and others it can be many years. I mean, nobody's the same, and I understand that some people might not relate to my story at all, but I'm sure there are some aspects that some people can relate to, at least in some way. And even though 2021 was fairly mild and calm, I was still, even though I was working a lot and was able to find something to distract me and occupy me, so I was able to basically, at least make money and learn some important skills in life. I still felt like that things weren't really going to get too much better mentally. It was just going to be this like standstill forever. But what I had not realized at the time was there was this extremely slow, but in retrospect noticeable transition into adulthood. I was slowly learning, how to be a good employee, how to, and how to, and I was, learning how to take on adult responsibilities. I was able to buy my car from my dad. learn, be able to pay my own car insurance, start being food independent. I now pay for all my own food now. I get all my own food. I don't really rely on my parents for that. I mean, today, all I really do is just live in my parents' house. That's about it. And I'm on their health insurance until I'm 26, just because I can be. It's not like it costs them extra for them to have me here. um, but there was this slow climb, and I was slowly learning basically how to be an adult. I couldn't really see it at the time because it was extremely low transition, and you can't really notice something like that until you see how far you come. You know, it's it's very slow and an increment, but you do start to notice it when you look back on where you've been, right? And even though I was starting to feel better mentally through therapy and working and feeling more like an adult, I did still want to do something that that really that I feel like I could really make my own and start a new chapter of my life, because I had not played. The last time I played the oboe was 2020, and I didn't think that was going to change anytime soon. And I feel like people only really knew me for my time as an oboe player, and I kind of wanted to change that. I really wanted to have a new identity, and I wanted to not just be seen as this person who played an instrument, but I wanted to be seen as many things. And I'm saying, like, I didn't want to be, I just didn't want to be seen as one thing. I wanted to be someone who's like, who can do, who does multiple things, who has multiple hobbies and multiple passions, and can do things that I can be proud of, and that other people can be proud of. And I don't mean that in a very self-centered way. I think that's something that anyone can strive for, that I think anyone should strive for. Because we shouldn't just be defined by one thing or one hobby. We should be defined by multiple hobbies and multiple passions, and in multiple journeys that we take. Because we're a multitude of things. We're complex human beings. So, I don't know, I can't really fully remember where it came from, but I was starting to get into road trips and camping by myself. I started to get into climbing mountains, hiking up them, and I was really falling in love with nature, and because I didn't really mind driving long distances. I mean, heck, for 2 years during my junior and senior year of high school, I drove 45 minutes at least 3 times a day to go to my second school. So I never minded driving at all. And I really wanted to do something big to try to make a new name and identity for myself. And I wanted to do something that I could be proud of. And I could say I did that, because I realized so many points in my life I'd always pretended to be something else. For much of my time in primary school, middle school, and elementary school, there were so many times when I always pretend to be something else because I feel like who I wasn't good enough and that nobody else would like. And so I really wanted to do something that I could not lie about. I can say, no, I actually did that. And then, as you've probably seen in 2022, I drove all the way to the West Coast and back. And now I could talk for hours about that trip. There are so many stories and so many things I can go into about those 83 days that I spent on the road. I could talk for hours about that. But I think the only thing that I only need to say about that right now is that trip, that journey that I took was, I think, the culmination of how far I've come as a person in the previous 3 years. And I remember during that time, my therapist actually called me and told me she was actually leaving the department and I wasn't going to have sessions with her anymore. And at first I was extremely sad about that because I really liked her and I think we worked really well together. I had been seeing her for 3 years. But then I thought, you know what? I think that's okay. Because I'm very proud of what we've accomplished together. But I think this is a sign that life is good now. This is a sign that I don't need therapy anymore, at least for now. And I think this is the time where I now go out on my own and just see how things go from here and truly test myself and trust myself. And so I thanked her for all she had done for me. I still remember I was in Yosemite National Park in California at the time that I had that last phone call with her. It was very bittersweet, and then I proceeded to climb one of the domes in Yosemite. And I still remember standing on top of that dome, just looking over the beautiful views of that national park. And I could just see like the light shining down on me. And I just said to myself, this is it. This is the light that I had been waiting for so long. And I realized that on this trip, this was the first time ever that I truly felt happy and proud of myself. And that's when I knew that the depression era was over. And then I made my way back home. And that is still one of the craziest things and most proudest things that I've ever done. I don't think I'm ever going to forget that trip, that journey, and how much it meant to me and what I accomplished. I'll never forget it as long as I live. Even if I do more, and I'm sure bigger things in the future than that, I don't think I'll ever forget the first one, that one that I did, just because of how impactful it was and how meaningful it was. And ever since that, things have been great. I started school again at community college. It's gone amazingly. I've made so many other road trips. I have so many travels that I've done, so many that I have planned in the future that I can't wait for. And yeah, there were certainly other challenges that, I am facing, I know that I'm going to face, but that's just part of life. And, because it's not like, once you're done, all of a sudden you're going to be, happy and everything's going to be sunshine and rainbows forever. No, there's going to be other challenges and hurdles you face in the future. I know that. But, and even when I do, experience pain in the future, because I know I will experience more pain, I'm okay with that because it won't be the end. And cause, and I will never forget where I have been. I will never forget the pain that I have experienced, because when I was lying in that first mental hospital in November 2019, that first night that I was there, I remember was so overcome with fear and anxiety that I like I had a bad like reaction to a medication, and I ended up like puking it all over the floor. I'm sorry, that's disgusting. But that was my rock bottom, basically. That was my rock bottom. Just like, because after it all came out, I just tumbled over and just lied on the floor and cried. That was, even though I wasn't experiencing too much pain physically, just besides like, the cramps and stomachs that you get when you throw up, that was still probably the most painful moment of my life. And I don't think anything will come close to that moment. And I don't think I'll ever get to that moment again, unless I make some extremely poor decisions in my life right now. Nothing will ever come close to that, unless I let it. So I'm okay with the challenges that I'll face in the future. And because now I've become a student who gets straight A's in community college. And I think that's just like a testament to how far I've come, how much I've learned, how much I've changed and grown as a person, how much my mindset has changed. It's honestly amazing how much you can change in just a few years, and how much a traumatic and extremely grim period like that can change you. Because like all that growth, that was when I was out of school. That was after I was in high school. And it really wasn't until then that I started to grow as a person. It's funny how that works. But I think, the moral of the story is that just don't let your pain define you. And when you do experience pain, know it's not the end. And even when you do hit rock bottom, there is always a path to fully recover, to fully come back from it. Even when you feel like you have failed, even if you feel like the light at the end of the tunnel will never come, please let me serve as a living testimony that the light at the end of the tunnel is real. It's fucking real. So I hope other people who might be struggling will hear that, and I hope this can help them. And yeah, that's pretty much the last 4 years. And there's probably like a lot that I left out because I'm recording this pretty much long, one take basically, just because I wouldn't want to do it any other way. I know you've been listening to me talk for a while. Thank you for watching this the whole way if you did. I do really appreciate that. And I really hope that whoever's watching this, if you ever felt like if you ever sent me a message because I looked like I was in a bad place, thank you. And I'm sorry that I portrayed myself as such a toxic person. And if you ever felt attacked by me, if I've done something that wronged you, then I'm sorry. And I really hope that me showing how much I've changed and grown as a person can prove to you how sorry I am. And I hope to make amends, but I know if I can't, then at least I can know that I've tried. And to the people who I still talk with, and who I have made amends with, then I can't tell you how much I appreciate you for giving me a second chance. It really has meant everything to me. I really mean that. And thank you to everyone who has supported me from the very beginning, and who gave me love, and who's given me words of hope when I needed the most. And I can never ever thank you all enough. It's a debt that I can never repay, but I'm more than happy to keep trying. So yeah, I hope this helps in any sort of way. I hope this can help you get some closure on this whole thing if you wanted closure on this. I do hope this will also help me too, to finally, now that I put this out there, to finally put everything to rest, and to finally make peace and move on. I'm sure there's something I missed, and I'll probably regret even just one thing to miss, but whatever. It's fine. At least I can say that I tried, and that I talked about my story, and tried to make some sort of closure. Yeah, I think that's it for now. Maybe I'll go more into other stuff in a future video or something. I don't know, but I think it feels right to end on this for now. So thank you for watching this whole thing. If you have, I really appreciate that. I appreciate everybody, all of my friends and family who have supported me for so long, and I hope to continue being the best person that I can be, and do more cool things in the future. And I hope to, and again, I thank you all for everyone who has been there for me, and I hope to be there for you if you ever need help. And if there are any questions that you have, please feel free to reach out to me. My DMs and doors are always open. I'm always happy to talk with anyone. And if anyone needs any help, please don't be afraid to reach out to me, because I know what it's like to be in a dark place. I'll also list some other resources in the description below. Yeah, no, but thank you everyone. I love you all so much. You all mean the world to me. And yeah, that's it. Take care of yourself. Take care of somebody else if you can. Thank you for being there for me, and I hope I can be there for you. Okay, bye-bye.